Cincinnati last season had one of the best seasons of football in the school's history. Cincinnati is a proud program in football and had great success in the late 2000s, most recently under Brian Kelly. The Bearcats went 9-1 in 2020 and had a legitimate shot at the playoff. Head coach Luke Fickell has one of the best teams heading into college football during the 2021 season. And with so much uncertainty amongst the top teams with so many new faces, and with a good schedule for the Bearcats, they have an even better chance and a case to make for making the college football playoff if things break their way. Last season, Cincinnati just kept getting better and better every single week that went on. But their final 3 games were definitely their toughest stretch, where they had 2 games in a row with a 1-point victory, and they lost their final game in the state of Georgia to obviously the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, Cincinnati had the lead against Georgia, and it took a late comeback by quarterback JT Daniels to get Georgia to win that game. But Cincinnati definitely showed their own and definitely showed they could handle playing with such fierce competition in an SEC team that is one of the best in college football. Desmond Ridder is the quarterback for the Bearcats, and he is coming back this season. And he was obviously the American Offensive Player of the Year last year, and he's improved so much over his career, and he's definitely getting legitimate looks to be an NFL quarterback and could honestly be taken in the first round of next year's draft. So for Cincinnati, the talk is always about, can they actually get the job done? Can they make the college football playoff? And yes, the college football playoff is probably one of the hardest things to make, especially if you're not one of the Power 5 teams, or really one of the top teams consistently in the sport like Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, one of those big schools. So for Desmond Ridder, it's going to take a lot, but Cincinnati is also filled with some other incredible talent, especially on the defensive end. They have a top 10 player in the sport in corner Ahmad Gardner, who is fantastic. And on the other side of him is corner Kobe Bryant, Kobe with a C, but he is still a really great corner as well. And then they have an edge rusher in Myjai Sanders, who had a great year last year and is probably a top 40 player in the sport as well. So their defense is outstanding, and head coach Luke Fickell is a defensive coach. And he has a quarterback on the other side of the ball that can hold his own. So like Desmond Ridder is a really good quarterback who honestly can kind of bail them out in certain scenarios because he's such an experienced quarterback too. Now, looking at the schedule for Cincinnati, it's pretty simple. They get their first 2 warm-up games versus Murray State and Miami of Ohio. So you don't want to just not play them hard at all. They're going to have to play hard, but it's their next 2 games after that are the toughest because they have to go to Indiana, and then the very next week they have to go back to Indiana and go to Notre Dame. In back-to-back weeks, that's, a huge ask. And this is really going to decide their shot at making the college football playoff, especially if Indiana and Notre Dame have good seasons like last year, maybe 2 top 15 teams. Let's just say Cincinnati wins. I mean, that Notre Dame game is going to be extremely tough because they'll be playing defensive coordinator from last season, Cincinnati's defensive coordinator from last season, Marcus Freeman, who's now the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So he's very familiar with Cincinnati, and that's a huge concern. The other concern is also that Brian Kelly, the head coach of Notre Dame, was the former head coach of Cincinnati. So there's a lot of connections in that game. It's going to be a huge game at Notre Dame. It's probably Notre Dame's biggest game on their schedule to start out the season for sure. But let's just say, they win those games against Indiana and Notre Dame. Really, their toughest games left, they'll have to play Temple right after that. But then it's UCF, who is the second best team in the American to a lot of people. That would be their other toughest game. I think that'd be that 4th game in that gauntlet. It would be Indiana, Notre Dame, then at home at Temple, and then again, I think home versus UCF. So it's a huge 4-game stretch. But you know what? The Bearcats avoid Memphis. They avoid Houston during the season. So we're going to find out in early October if Cincinnati still has a shot at the playoff, because if they win all those games, it honestly looks like they can definitely make the college football playoff. And I'm saying this because I think that college football right now, there's a lot of uncertainty with the top teams. Like, yes, Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State are still the top 3 teams, but they're losing a lot. Alabama lost everything from their offense. Ohio State lost Justin Fields. They have a super young offense despite a great wide receiver core. And then with Clemson, DJU is still a really good quarterback, but we don't know a whole lot about him. And they lost Trevor Lawrence, who's one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen in college football. So Cincinnati definitely has a shot at making the playoff. If they make it out undefeated, they were a top 10 team last year. So I think the committee could actually not screw them over because they know at least consistently Cincinnati's been good. It's not like they're just a team just completely out of the blue. And you could honestly make a case that the Bearcats have a tougher schedule than Clemson or Oklahoma in some aspects. Like Oklahoma is another team that is getting a lot of looks at making the playoff or being one of the top teams in the sport. But again, Oklahoma hasn't consistently gotten the job done, and I don't know a whole lot about Spencer Rattler. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of his. So honestly, Cincinnati really does bring a lot to the table, more than a lot of the best teams in college football. I know it's saying a lot. It's still an American team. Just saying that I think that I trust Cincinnati a little bit more than these other teams, especially if they play like they did last year. Cincinnati definitely has a shot at making the college football playoff, and I really mean that. I know it's tough to make the playoff as a smaller school, but Cincinnati's really not that small. And with, conference realignment happening and Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12 or wanting to at least leave, Cincinnati has a good shot. If they have a great season this year in football, they could really make a good argument to the Big 10 or maybe even join the Big 12 if they reform a little bit. Cincinnati, they have their eyes set on expanding. They want to be one of the premier programs in college football. I think Luke Fickell wants to be there as well. He's gotten a lot of looks. So this season's more than just a good football season. This actually could really help Cincinnati in the long run if they have a great season, help them at least propel to a higher league. Obviously their basketball program's been consistently good, but they've kind of fallen down a little bit. But I really like Cincinnati as a program. I think they have a good argument to make to be, maybe one of the best teams in college football this year. Who knows? Maybe they could win a national championship if things hit the fan for some of these other teams, which I highly doubt. Think that Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, or Oklahoma are probably going to make the college football playoff. But I'm just saying, if some of them slip up, Cincinnati goes undefeated, you never know what could happen. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, especially if you're a Cincinnati fan, but I do really believe in this team, guys. I really do. I love Desmond Ridder a lot. I think he's a great quarterback, and I can't wait to watch the Bearcats play this season. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace.